Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Master the NEC, where we talk about National Electrical Code, all things electrically related. My name is Paul Abernathy, your host as always, and welcome to tonight's podcast. So on this episode tonight, I want to talk a little bit about in the field and how code applies to your applications in the field, your work in the field. Because, there's a lot of people that say, Paul, you focus too much on code. When do I use code? When is code something that has to be a focal point in my career as an electrician? We'll talk a little bit about it today, in the field concepts, what we're dealing with. Now, obviously, as I've done episodes before, we talked about the different things that I go through as an electrical contractor when I was really heavily in contracting. And, the setup, the preparation, to getting the equipment, to getting to the site, laying out everything. But, understanding code, at least for me in my business through the years, when I was back in Virginia and me and my brother were heavily working our construction business. And, code plays such an important role because we were lucky enough that I could focus on the code and my brother could focus on the other aspects of the business. And it just always seemed like something always revolved around the code, whether it's, okay, so you have electricians people that say, well, we don't have to worry about code. But if you think about it, you are worried about code, right? I mean, every box that you install, every piece of cable that you pull, every staple that you install, every panel you install, every piece of the install has something to do with code. Something. So to say that you don't need to know code is probably I might as well say it, although who knows the people I tend to offend, okay? But it's probably an ignorant statement. Yeah, I mean, you got to know code. Now, your level of code might be different than somebody else's level of code. Obviously, it's going to be different than a CMECP's level of code. So the National Electrical Code, for example, that's the electrician's Bible, right? That's what we use to make sure that we're the minimally safest a structure can be under that concept of a minimum safety standard. That's what the NEC is all about, is to practical safeguard people from the property and people from the hazards that arise from the use of electricity, right? Kind of loosely stated, that's what the purpose is of the NEC. And everybody has to know a piece of it. Well, the problem with it is, as an installer, you subconsciously know this, right? When you install a box, you know that you have to install the box. You don't think about all the little pieces that are involved with installing that box. But you got to think about it. You got to think about whether it's set back in the wall or whether or not it's flush with whatever the finished surface is. You have to worry about, again, maybe code doesn't tell you the height, but maybe ADA has something to do with that. So you're always thinking about these different things, but there's always some type of code that revolves around it. And so you have to learn it when you're drilling your holes, when you're going top plates, when you are your conductors, free conductor in a box. All these different things are stuff that is code. Now, you can say that it's not code, but it is. It's all code. It all revolves around a code. You just gotten to the point where subconsciously you're thinking it's just the install. And that's what's, in your brain, you're thinking, well, that's just the install. But it's still code. And there's two pieces to, the hands-on learning the different techniques and learning how to do the things and route your home runs and best way to lay out circuits and knowing how much load you're putting on something, that just comes with time. And whether you're a seasoned pro at it now or you're an apprentice or somebody that's learning that, you will get that over time. Just remember, as equally as important as it is to start learning those skills, it's equally as important to begin to learn code. Now, people ask me, when should you start learning code? Well, many people have seen the fact that I posted that even back when I was 17 years old, 16, 17 years old, I was taking night classes in the NEC from local electrical inspectors and local educators, in addition to what I was doing during the day at my vocational school. And so I learned early on that code was a critical component in learning my trade. Okay. I could have learned through just doing it in trial and error and have people reject stuff and start turning it down. But at the end of the day, that costs money. That, nobody pays you to do things twice. They pay you to do it once, and they want you to do it right. So there's no sense in jacking up somebody else's dime for my mistakes. And the thing about the code is that you can learn it. Anybody can learn it. Now, you don't have to memorize it all because the book is always handy. But you do learn certain aspects of it that are locked in your head. And so the next install you go to, you won't make the same mistake twice because you've been researching it, you've been studying it, you're in practice. And the thing about the code is that there's so much in there. And I challenge people all the time. I say, if you really want to get better at the code, then you have to target things that you feel are your weakness in the code. If you don't know EVs under 625, then take some time and really dig in. That's a very small article. But take some time and dig into it. And what I tell people if they want to learn it is sit down and read it. And then every time you get to something that you just don't understand 100%, write it down. And then get with somebody who's more educated on it, has a little more experience on it, somebody that's well-versed in the NEC, and present the question to them because you're just trying to add on to your knowledge. And so I do that all the time, depending on, it might not be just code, it might be something in life. I'm always trying to add to my repository of knowledge because the moment that you know it all or you think you know it all is the moment that you need to give up and do something else because you become complacent and now you become hazardous to yourself. So when I'm looking at it in the field, it's important to learn the install, but you also need to have something paralleling that with learning the code. And I mean from the early stage, okay? Because what happens is the more you learn, the more things will make more sense, okay? You understand why you're running a multi-wire branch circuit, well, then you'll understand about the breaker setup or why you have to, do identified handle ties, and you'll learn all these things, and then it'll just click, right? You'll just say, oh, this makes sense. So beyond that, why else in the field is it important to understand code as an electrical guy or gal? Is inspections. So you're going to have inspectors, and again, I will tell you, not all inspectors are created equal, the same as not all electricians are created equal. Some are better than others. In many states, there's not really a big prerequisite to be an electrical inspector. You don't have to put in near the amount of time as an electrician would put in their trade. But in reality, they're the people that are going to give you the green tag. They're the ones that are going to say, okay, everything looks good. Now you get to close up that wall. And there's going to be situations where there's going to be confrontation, right? You're going to have maybe an electrical inspector who thinks they're interpreting something one way, and it might be right and it might be wrong. And it might differ with something that your interpretation is or what you've been studying. And then, heads are going to collide, if you will, at that point. And I can tell you, ultimately, the coolest head's going to win. But an inspector sometimes can be very stubborn. And electricians can be very stubborn, right? So there is a high road you can take, but you always have to remember that even with an electrical inspector, unless it's just a really, really small jurisdiction, that you should have the ability to go over their head to the building official if you need to do that. Now, a lot of people will say, well, if I go over the building official's head, then what happens is I have repercussions, right? So the inspector is going to hold a grudge against me. And this may be true. And in many cases, it would not. Now, many people know that I was a head of jurisdictions back in Virginia, 2 separate ones when it came to the electrical aspects. And, I always used to tell the inspectors, you cannot fail something if you can't produce the reason for the failure. Not just because it's how I used to do it or how I did it when I was an electrician and I'm going to force people to do these things. The National Electrical Code is a minimum standard. Can I go above the minimum? Absolutely. But that's my choice. An inspector should never force down my throat to do something beyond the minimum standard, unless their jurisdiction has adopted something formally, and I should know this going into it. That's why I research these things. That's why, as an electrician, I learn the code, and I'm constantly learning the code. Okay, and you might say, "Well, I'm just here to do the work." Remember, you're trying to reduce the stress while you work. If you learn the code, then you're not going to make mistakes. You don't have to worry about an inspection failing on you, and it just lowers that stress level. But again, the other aspect of the code for an electrician when it comes to inspection is, if you fail the inspection, you have to go through it again. And it eats up time. And again, time is money, and we're trying to move on. Now, depending on the jurisdiction you're in, it could be the next day or it could be a week out. Just depends on where you're at. So you should have a good level of incentive to make sure that when that inspector comes out there, that you have everything buttoned up like it needs to be. And if a confrontation arises because of an interpretation, then you can have a inspector to contractor discussion, be able to support your position. And if they still don't see it and you're in the right, remember, you always can go over their head. Now, you have to think about, well, if I do that, there are going to be consequences to it. Now, personally, I can be honest with you, I never worried about that because code is what it is. And if somebody is going to hold a grudge like that, then that's a little man syndrome, and I don't worry about those people. I just go on with what I'm going to do. If I do it right and I do it to the code, then I should have nothing to worry about, right? Okay. So another aspect in the field that electricians need to be aware of when they're learning code is, they have a responsibility, I believe, you might disagree, but I believe they have a responsibility to be a mentor. In other words, a master electrician needs to teach a journeyman needs to teach apprentices need to teach helpers, providing they're teaching accurate information. Again, somebody's got to be the watchdog for that, if you will. But master electricians, they should be making sure that they're passing on this trade, that they're letting the other people know all these little tips and tricks and things to maneuver to make their life easier. This is not one of those professions where let's take our knowledge to the grave. We want to pass it on. We want to help other people understand these nuances. When it comes to, there's a right way and a wrong way, for example, to pull MC cable through a metal stud, right? So there's just different things that you could pass on, and they might seem like just non-significant things, but they are significant. And it's the same way when we're learning the code. Teach somebody the right. Now, I can tell you right now, this is one of those things that I do. When I go onto forums, message board forums, I can tell you right now, some of the stuff that I see posted, I really get to worrying because I really believe some of the stuff that people post, they truly do believe what they post. And that's scary because some of the things that they post are flat out wrong, but they're perpetuating it to other people because they're teaching the wrong thing. So an electrician should have enough pride in their knowledge and in learning code so that when they pass on information, they're passing on accurate information. That's critical because anybody can pass on BS that gets spread around, but are you actually sharing legitimate things that people can learn from? And that's exactly why we have monitoring on our Facebook page. If I see something that I think that's just not right, then it's going to be removed. But if you have something you post that it's legitimate, okay, it's a legitimate thing that needs to be discussed, then obviously I'm going to leave it, right? Because I don't want to perpetuate falseness or information that's not correct. And again, interpretation being what it is, you might have somebody that disagrees with my position on something, and that's fine. But there is a lot of stuff out there that's just blatantly just wrong, and they're passing it on. So it should be the responsibility of a professional. And again, that's the other thing, professionalism. I think today that, I see so much on Instagram. I see so much of people and what they do and how they carry themselves. And I think to myself, those obviously are not business owners. They're the help, because the way they're acting such a fool reflects poorly on their company. And I'm like, and they literally will take videos of it and just goofing off and screwing around on a job site or doing something. And you got to ask yourself, is this what you want to portray to everybody for your profession? And I get it. Young people want to shoot off and have a good time. I get it. But the more that you start treating this profession at the higher level, and understand that you are going to be mentoring, whether you like it or not, people that are underneath you. So take a little more pride in what you do. Don't be afraid to show somebody else a little trick or a tip or talk about code. I'm a big person that says that all contractors should have in the morning or midday or during lunch, they should have a little code session. If you're talking about one thing, maybe 300.4 nail plates. When you have a bored hole and it's less than 1.25 inches from the edge of the bored hole to the edge of the framing member, why don't you talk about that and say that applies to both sides of the framing member? Talk about the nail plates. Talk about installations of them. These type of things, it might be little, but there are people out there, and I've learned this the hard way. Every time I get to the point where I think to myself, there's nothing else to talk about. I mean, I've got literally... You could listen to all of my podcasts and my videos for an entire year and never listen to the same one, or over a year now. And I'm thinking, haven't I taught everything? And then I get reality check. I get emails and texts and questions that come in and things like that. And I realize I've covered it, but there's still people out there that need that education. They always need additional education. So that's what keeps me motivated to be able to provide that information. So you as an electrician, think of yourself as a mentor. You're spreading the best profession in the world, in my opinion. Okay? We make the lights come on, man. We give people the ability to use their appliances. If it wasn't for us, people would be in the dark. Think of it that way. So anyway, mentor, do your part, and make sure that you pass on the image that you want people to remember. Not that you were cut up and that you didn't take your job serious. Again, I'm sure I get people that don't like that, but usually I can tell you this much. If this doesn't make sense to you and you're like a thumbs down kind of person, then that tells me that you're probably worthy of that thumbs down, if you know what I mean. Really. We don't worry about you because obviously you don't take this profession seriously. You probably aren't that knowledgeable anyway. And again, you're just, there's no hope for you. But if you truly understand something and you realize that it's your responsibility to pass on a profession and teach other people and not hold it in, but let it go out and train other people, whether you're charging for it, right? Okay. So anyway, so that's a mentorship. And again, lastly, you have to always think about as an electrician that you're marketing yourself. You're always taking an opportunity to do the best work you can do, the neatest work you can, not just because it works the same, whether it's neat or sloppy. Again, neatness is in the eye of the beholder, but you're taking that ultimate pride in the work that you do. Okay. I see a lot of times people and we're talking codes. So I see a lot of times people will post images of an installation and they have a lot of pride in what they do. You can tell they're very proud of their work. But then they don't think about the fact that we tend to, and this is very common with electricians, by the way. I don't see a lot of plumbers and mechanical people going back and forth, but I see a lot of, electrical people. We're so quick to want to judge somebody else's work. I get it. I I don't judge anything based on, usually cut up too much on people when it's based on certain type of work. What I'm looking for is when they post something that has violations in it. And they're really proud of their work, but then they post it and there's blatant code violations in it. To me, before you post something like that, you should, unless you're posting it for a reason to have people comment on it because of these violations, you should make an effort to post only the best of your pictures that represent your work. Make sure there's no code violations in the image that you're getting ready to upload. Now, maybe legitimately you don't know that there are violations. I get it. Maybe you don't know. But you should make an effort to learn the code. Learn what you're looking at so that you're posting stuff that is a positive reflection on your work. Positive reflection on you. Okay? Again, I'm only giving you my opinions on that in the field, but that's, again, my opinion when it's based on how you should reflect on yourself in the field. Again, so when wrapping this up with code, you need to know code from an early stage. You don't have to be an expert, but you need to be able to understand what you read. You need to have the reading comprehension skills to be able to interpret what you read. That takes time. That takes practice. Every install that you do, there is some kind of code attached to it, whether you think it is or not. Every time you drill that hole, every time you pull that cable, every time you terminate those conductors, every little piece of it has some type of code attached to it. And life is so much simpler if you understand the code, because then it just becomes happenstance. And you do it and you know it's compliant. Inspectors are going to come look at stuff. You want to make sure that you pass your inspections. And so knowing the code helps ensure that your inspections go smoothly. You don't have any delays. And if you have an intelligent conversation with an inspector and you understand the code, you might find that in some cases you get an interpretation that comes out on your side of the fence and you're excited about it. Y'all both learn something in a day, that type of thing. Also, just be very open-minded, because there are some very intelligent inspectors out there who can impose knowledge on you as well. And so you want to learn from it. Mentorship. Remember that we're trying to promote this profession. There was a reason why I founded the CMECP. It is a professional certification. It takes a master electrician and starts making them think about the next level. And that's what it does. Okay? It makes them think about the next level. And of course, you have to mentor other people. You have to pass on this profession. You need to take this profession as what it is. Okay? You don't see doctors and lawyers going on, well, barring some of the political ones, you don't see them going on and acting like a fool because they're presenting an impression. Treat your electrical contracting business the same way. Promote yourself as the ultimate professional. Okay? If somebody says, well, that guy's too professional, he's a fuddy-duddy, that's fine, because he's a professional. She's a professional. Okay? And remember, you have a responsibility to help promote that profession and mentor other people. And then lastly, when we talk about it, you're always marketing yourself. Okay? You're a reflection of your actions. And so you always want to focus on when the camera's on, when you're ready to go, when your people are watching you, you want to always send the most professional image that you can send, because you're marketing yourself, right? And you need to take this profession serious, because this is the greatest profession, I feel. And it's giving me so many opportunities in my life, and it can for you as well. There's so many different opportunities that you can go down, the different paths when it comes to electrical, low voltage, communication applications, service contractor, PV installer, electric vehicle installer, just run service calls, 1 and 2 family dwelling applications, single family dwelling, multifamily, commercial, industrial. The sky's the limit. Niche market, where you do only maybe some small little minor things. Maybe you only do hot tubs. Maybe, you know what I'm saying? There's something that you can tailor and gives you an opportunity. But if you're screwing around, you're not going to be able to seize those opportunities. And I can bet you right now, I'm putting no trust in somebody that acts like a fool. I'm serious. And as an owner, I am not sending somebody to a project or a job acting like a fool, because then it runs the risk that they're not paying attention and somebody's going to get hurt. And ultimately, I'm the owner, so the dime stops with me, and I'm not going to have it. So most of those people that act a fool and post videos that act a fool, or act a fool on a job site, chances are the owners have no idea. I'm serious. Because if an owner was doing it, they're a damn fool, because they've got to keep a customer. They got to protect an image. They have to promote themselves. They have to market themselves. They have to help mentor and teach the people under them, because they want it to be done the way they want it to be done. That's part of mentoring. So at the end of the day, I don't know any owner that would do that. It's usually the employee. And personally, I would snap that employee in line, whether they like it or not. They can thumbs down this video or podcast all they want. I don't really care. That's my belief on it. And that's how I ran my companies. And if you wanted to work for me, when you're on my dime and you're working, I want your utmost attention. I want these installations to be code compliant. I want you to pass on your knowledge to somebody that might not have as much knowledge as you. And you are always on my jobs marketing yourself as a true professional, in case one of my customers, they're not your customer, they're my customer, happens to walk on the site or is in proximity, and they don't get the wrong impression of how I run my company. That's what the image that I try to send. Okay. Doesn't make me the funnest guy to work for. We have our after hours fun. We'll have those get togethers. We'll do different things together as a group. But when we're on, we're on. And I expect you to be professional. Wear a shirt with my logo on it. I expect you to look nice and tidy, no holy jeans. I expect you to carry yourself with a customer, no F-bombs. I don't want you doing any of that. When you're with my customer, you're an extension of me. Okay, whether you're doing a rough in on a job site or you're going to a service call, you're an extension of me. Get the job done. Do it to the best performance you can and get out of there onto the next job. You with me? Okay. Anyway, that's just kind of the way I look at things. Some people might look at it differently, and you know what? That's okay. That's perfectly fine, however they want to look at it. But at the end of the day, that's my opinion on it. So next time, folks, stay safe. Until the next podcast, God bless and be safe out there.